My name is Leah. I'm 18. And last Tuesday, I held my future in my hands for exactly 17 minutes before my mother decided it wasn't mine to hold. The envelope was thick, heavier than I expected. When I pulled it from our dented mailbox, my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. 4 years of perfect grades, volunteer hours that bled into weekends, essays rewritten until my fingers cramped. All of it distilled into this single white rectangle with my name printed in neat university letterhead. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I didn't open it on the porch. Couldn't risk it. Instead, I clutched it against my chest and slipped inside, past the kitchen where Mom was scrubbing dishes with the kind of violence she reserved for stubborn stains and stubborn daughters. Up the stairs, down the hallway lined with family photos that somehow never included my achievements, only Sophia's soccer trophies and participation ribbons. In my room, door locked, hands shaking, I finally tore it open. Dear Ms. Moreno, congratulations. We are pleased to offer you admission to Stanford University's class of 2029. The words blurred, my chest cracked open, and something wild and bright spilled out. I pressed my palm to my mouth to muffle the sound, but joy doesn't stay quiet. It bubbles up from places you didn't know existed. I read it again, then again. Each time, the words stayed the same. Real. True. I was getting out. I tucked the letter inside my calculus textbook, smoothed my hair, and walked downstairs with the kind of careful composure I'd perfected over 18 years of walking on eggshells. Mom was wiping down the counter with mechanical precision, her dark hair pulled back so tight it stretched the corners of her eyes. "Good day at school?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah." I hesitated at the kitchen threshold. "Actually, something came in the mail." Her cloth stopped moving. "Oh." I retrieved the letter, my hand steadier now, and placed it on the counter between us. She glanced at the Stanford logo, and something flickered across her face. Not pride, something colder. "You applied there?" Her voice was flat. "I told you I was applying to colleges, Mom." "I thought you meant community college. Somewhere reasonable." She picked up the letter, and I watched her eyes scan the first paragraph. Her jaw tightened. "Do you know how much this costs?" "There's financial aid, scholarships. I can work." "Work? You think you can just leave, pack up, and abandon your family?" "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm going to college." She folded the letter in half, creasing it with deliberate pressure. "Your father works double shifts to keep this house running. Sophia needs help with her schoolwork, and you want to run off to California to play student?" The words hit like ice water. This wasn't how I had imagined this conversation. Where were the congratulations? Pride, the acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, I'd done something extraordinary. "Mom, this is Stanford. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand that my daughter thinks she's too good for her family." Dad chose that moment to shuffle into the kitchen, work boots still on, leaving traces of construction dust on Mom's pristine floor. He nodded at me, then noticed the tension crackling between us like a live wire. "What's going on?" he asked as he settled into his chair at the head of the table. "Leah going to some fancy college." Mom's tone made it sound like an accusation. Dad's eyebrows lifted slightly. That's good, right?" But Mom was already walking toward the sink, a letter still in her hand. "We'll discuss it later," she said, and I knew that tone. Discussion closed. I wanted to argue, to explain about the opportunities, the professors, the research programs that could change everything. But the words died in my throat. This was how it always went. My dreams got smaller and smaller until they fit comfortably in the box Mom had built around our family. Sophia appeared in the doorway, backpack strung over one shoulder, soccer cleats dangling from her fingers. "What college?" she asked, looking between us. "Nothing important," Mom said quickly. But Sophia's eyes found mine, and I saw something there. Curiosity, maybe even admiration. For a second, I thought about telling her, about sharing this one perfect moment before it got buried under the weight of family obligations and guilt. Instead, I just smiled. Just college stuff. That night, after dinner dishes were cleared and homework was done, after Sophia went to bed and Dad fell asleep in his recliner with the TV still on, I lay in my narrow bed and imagined walking across Stanford's campus, sitting in lecture halls with professors who'd written the textbooks, meeting people who'd traveled the world, who had dreams bigger than this small town could contain. I imagined calling Mom from my dorm room, telling her about my classes, my friends, my future. In these fantasies, she was proud. She told everyone in the grocery store checkout line about her daughter at Stanford. But downstairs, I heard her moving around in the kitchen, the soft sound of the trash can lid closing, the whisper of paper being thrown away. I told myself it was probably just junk mail. I told myself a lot of things that night. 3 days passed, 3 days of waiting for Mom to bring up the letter, to ask questions about move-in dates or course catalogs. 3 days of watching her face remain carefully blank whenever Stanford came up in conversation, which was exactly never. Sophia mentioned it once at breakfast on Thursday. "Wasn't there some college thing you were talking about?" she asked, around a mouthful of cereal. Mom's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What college thing?" "The letter that came, the one that made everyone weird." "Nobody was weird," Mom said, setting down her cup with precision. "Leah was just getting ahead of herself." I stared at my untouched toast. Getting ahead of myself. Like ambition was a character flaw, something to be corrected with enough guilt and disappointment. Dad rustled his newspaper, that universal signal for, "I'm not participating in this conversation." He'd perfected the art of disappearing into newsprint whenever tension crept into our kitchen. Sports scores and weather forecasts were safer than his wife's razor-sharp silences or his daughter's dangerous dreams. "But it was from Stanford," Sophia pressed, and I loved her for it even as I wanted to shush her. "That's like a really good school." "Good schools are expensive schools, and expensive schools are for families who can afford to throw money away on fantasies." The word hit like a slap. Fantasies. 4 years of straight A's, National Honor Society, volunteer work at the food bank, tutoring kids after school for free because I wanted to make a difference. All of it is reduced to fantasy. "I got a scholarship offer," I said quietly. Mom's head turned toward me, eyebrows raised. "Oh, did you? Full ride?" My cheeks burned. "Partial, but there's other aid." "Partial. So we'd still pay thousands of dollars we don't have so you can study subjects that don't lead to real jobs?" "Psychology leads to real jobs. Therapy, research, social work." "Social work," she laughed, and the sound was as bitter as burnt coffee. "You want to save the world, Mija? Start here. Your family needs you. Sophia needs help with her math. Your father's back is getting worse, and he can't keep doing construction forever. This family has real problems, not fantasy problems." Sophia's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match where the ball might explode at any moment. Dad flipped to the sports section with unnecessary force. I wanted to scream, to slam my hands on the table and ask why my dreams were always the thing that needed to be sacrificed, why Sophia's soccer camp was an investment in her future, but my education was selfish, why Dad's beer money never got questioned, but my textbooks were extravagant. Instead, I ate my toast, nodded, agreed that family came first, because that's what I had been trained to do. After school that day, I walked to the mailbox with the kind of hope that hurts. Maybe there would be more information from Stanford, financial aid details, housing forms, anything that would make this real again. The box was empty except for bills and grocery store circulars. I told myself they were probably processing applications, that information packets took time, but a cold certainty was settling in my chest like stones dropping into still water. That evening, while Mom and Sophia watched their telenovela and Dad dozed in his chair, I slipped into the kitchen and opened the drawer where Mom kept important papers. Insurance documents, Sophia's report cards, Dad's pay stubs. Everything organized with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of stretching dollars until they screamed. No Stanford letter. I checked the refrigerator, where Mom usually posted anything school-related. Sophia's perfect attendance certificate from last month, a reminder about parent-teacher conferences, a grocery list written in Mom's careful cursive. No Stanford letter. The trash can sat in the corner, innocent and white, with its step pedal gleaming under the kitchen light. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart hammering the way it had when I first held that envelope. I didn't lift the lid, couldn't bear to see what might be underneath banana peels and coffee grounds. But I knew. They ate at me for 2 days. It sat in my stomach like swallowed glass, sharp and cutting every time I moved. Saturday morning, while Mom ran errands and Dad worked on the neighbor's fence, I finally worked up the courage to look. The trash can's lid opened with a soft whoosh, and the smell of rotting food hit me first. Apple cores from yesterday's lunch, an empty yogurt container, coffee filters stained brown and crumpled, and there, wedged between a takeout container and Sophia's failed math quiz, was a corner of thick white paper. My hands shook as I pulled it free. The Stanford letterhead was stained with something dark and sticky. But the words were still visible through the mess. "Congratulations, we are pleased to offer you admission." The letter had been torn in half, then crumpled, then buried under a week's worth of garbage like it was nothing, like my future was nothing. I sank onto the kitchen floor, holding the pieces in my trembling hands, trying to fit them back together like some kind of tragic puzzle. The scholarship information was on the bottom half, the part that explained how I could actually make this work, how I could pay for my dreams without bankrupting my family. She'd thrown it all away. Not accidentally, not in a moment of anger. She'd torn it up, thrown it out, and then gone about her day like she'd just disposed of junk mail. "Leah?" Sophia's voice came from the doorway, uncertain. "What are you doing?" I looked up at my little sister, this girl who still believed in fairness and happy endings, and I couldn't form words. How do you explain that the person who's supposed to protect your dreams is the one systematically destroying them? Is that your college letter?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Sophia stepped closer, her eyes wide. "It was in the trash?" Another nod. "Did Mom—" The question hung between us like smoke. Sophia was 15, old enough to understand what this meant, but young enough to hope there was another explanation. Maybe it fell. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe our mother wasn't capable of this kind of deliberate cruelty. But in her eyes, I knew she knew better. She'd been watching these past few days. She'd seen Mom's careful non-reactions, the way conversations about my future got redirected to talk about family obligations and responsibility. "Leah?" she whispered. "What are you going to do?" I stared down at the ruined letter, at the Stanford logo now stained with coffee grounds and regret. The deadline for accepting admission was probably weeks away, maybe less. How long had this been sitting in the trash? How many days had I wasted waiting for Mom to bring it up, to show some interest in my future? "I don't know," I said, and my voice sounded strange and hollow. Sophia sat down beside me on the kitchen floor, her soccer socks bright against the faded linoleum. "You could call them, the college, tell them what happened." "And say what? My mom threw out my acceptance letter because she doesn't want me to leave?" "Yeah, say that." I looked at my little sister, this girl who still believed the truth was enough, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. What if she finds out? Sophia's jaw set in a way that reminded me of Mom at her most determined. What if you don't try? We sat there in the kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my destroyed dreams, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. Sophia reached over and squeezed my hand, her fingers sticky with whatever she'd been eating, and I squeezed back. "Don't tell her yet," I said. "Let me figure out what to do first." Sophia nodded solemnly, like I had just inducted her into a secret society. "I won't say anything." I gathered the pieces of the letter, smoothing them out as best I could, and tucked them into my calculus textbook, the same hiding place I'd used before.
back when I thought my secrets were safe, back when I believed my mother wanted what was best for me. Now I know better. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Sophia kept her promise for exactly 3 days. 3 days of exchanging meaningful looks across the breakfast table and whispering conversations that died the moment Mom walked into a room. 3 days of my little sister carrying the weight of our family's ugly truth like it was made of lead. On Wednesday afternoon, she cracked. I found her crying in her bedroom, math homework scattered across her desk like she'd given up mid-equation. The sight of her hunched shoulders and tear-stained cheeks made something protective and fierce rise up in my chest. "Hey," I said, settling onto her bed, "what's wrong?" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I keep thinking about your letter, about Mom throwing it away like it was garbage." I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but the words felt like lies before they even formed. Instead, I just sat there, letting her cry. "She did the same thing to Aunt Clara," Sophia said suddenly. My stomach dropped. "What?" "Years ago, before I was born, I heard her talking to Abuela on the phone once. Clara got into some art school in Chicago, and Mom convinced Abuela it was a waste of money. Said Clara would just get pregnant and drop out anyway." The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were pressing in. "How do you know this?" "Because I listen." Sophia's voice was small but steady. "When you guys think I'm not paying attention, I'm listening. And Mom doesn't want anyone to leave." I thought about Aunt Clara, who lived 2 towns over and only visited on major holidays, who brought expensive gifts and worked as a graphic designer for some company in the city. Mom always introduced me with a tight smile and comments about how some people think they're too good for family. Did Clara ever go to art school? Sophia shook her head. She stayed home for 2 years, working at the grocery store. By the time she saved enough money, the opportunity was gone. She moved out anyway, but Mom never forgave her. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. This wasn't about money or family obligations or practicality. This was about control, about keeping everyone close enough that Mom never had to face being alone with her choices. "Sophia," I said carefully, Has she ever discouraged you from things, dreams you've had?" My sister was quiet for a long moment, picking at a loose thread on her comforter. "I wanted to try out for the travel soccer team last year, the one that goes to tournaments in different states." "What happened?" "She said it was too expensive, too much driving, that I needed to focus on my grades instead of chasing fantasies." She looked up at me. "But she never even asked how much it cost. I looked it up later. We could have afforded it if she just asked Dad to work 1 extra Saturday a month." The casual cruelty of it made my chest tight. How many dreams had Mom killed before they could even take root? How many times had she planted doubt where there should have been encouragement? "I'm scared," Sophia whispered. "I'm scared that when it's my turn to graduate, she'll find ways to keep me here too. I'm scared I'll end up like me," I finished. She nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "But you're smart, Leah. You're the smartest person I know. If she can make you give up, what chance do I have?"
Mother, that art school was a waste of time. That I'd end up pregnant and penniless, living in... The question hit me like a physical blow. Because she was right. I was smart, hardworking, determined, and I'd been ready to accept Mom's version of reality, to fold my dreams up small enough to fit in the box she'd built for our family. But looking at Sophia's tear-streaked face, seeing the fear in her eyes, I realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. This wasn't just about me anymore. "She's not going to make me give up," I said, and my voice sounded stronger than I felt. "But the letter can be replaced. Colleges keep records, and Dean Harrison seemed eager to have me accept their offer." I stood up, pacing to Sophia's window. Outside, Mom was pulling into the driveway, grocery bags visible in the passenger seat. "I'm not going to let her do to you what she did to Clara, what she tried to do to Nee." Sophia watched me with something like hope flickering in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I turned back to her. "But I'm going to figure it out. And Sophia, when it's your turn, when you want to try out for travel soccer or apply to colleges or chase whatever dream you have, I'll help you. I promise." She smiled for the first time all week, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Aunt Clara, about the art school she never attended, the life she never lived, about Sophia, 15, and already learning to make her dreams smaller to fit Mom's expectations. And I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't just fighting for my future anymore. I was fighting for Sophia's. For every daughter who'd ever been told her dreams were too big, too expensive, too inconvenient for the family's comfort. Mom thought she could control the narrative by controlling the information, but she'd forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't the only one watching. Sophia had been taking notes all along. And now, we both knew the truth. Finding Aunt Clara's phone number took more detective work than I expected. Mom kept her contact information buried in an old address book, wedged between expired coupons and takeout menus like she hoped it would disappear through neglect. I called on Thursday afternoon while Mom was at her book club and Dad was still at work. My hands shook as I dialed, half expecting Clara to hang up the moment she heard my voice. "Leah," her surprise was genuine. "Honey, is everything okay? I need to ask you something. About college. About art school." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Clara sighed, and it sounded like she'd been holding her breath for 20 years. "Meet me at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street, 1 hour." She hung up before I could respond. Rosie's was the kind of place that had been old when my parents were dating, with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could wake the dead. Clara was already there when I arrived, her silver hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint still staining her fingernails, despite being 3 days past her last project. "You look like her," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "Everyone says I look like Dad." "Not your mother. Your grandmother. My mother." Clara stirred her coffee thoughtfully. She had the same stubborn chin, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. The waitress brought me a Coke without being asked, the kind of small-town service that came from working the same shift for 30 years. Clara waited until we were alone again before speaking. "She called me," she said simply. My heart stopped. "What?" "Last night. Crying. Said she was worried about you, about some college letter that went missing." Clara's eyes, the same dark brown as Mom's, but without the hardness, searched my face. "She also said she knew about my art school." I wanted to be angry at Sophia for going behind my back, but the relief was stronger. I wasn't carrying this alone anymore. "Is it true?" I asked. "About the art school in Chicago?" Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The Art Institute. Full scholarship based on my portfolio. I was 18, just like you. I thought I was going to change the world with my paintbrush." "What happened?" "Your mother happened." Clara's finger traced the rim of her coffee cup. "She convinced..." The words hit like ice water. "But you became a graphic designer, anyway." 10 years later, after I'd worked dead-end jobs and saved every penny I could, by then the scholarship was long gone. The connections I might have made, the professors who could have mentored me, the opportunities that come from being young and hungry and in the right place at the right time, all of it evaporated while I was home being a good daughter. I thought about the acceptance letter, now smoothed flat and hidden in my textbook, about Dean Harrison, who'd seemed genuinely excited about my application,
about all the opportunities that were slipping away while I sat in this diner, paralyzed by family obligation and guilt. Why did she do it? Clara was quiet for a moment, watching the traffic crawl past the diner's grimy windows. Because she was 19 when she got pregnant with you. Because she'd been planning to go to nursing school, had all the paperwork ready, and then your father came along with his sweet talk and promises. My chest tightened. I'd never heard this story before. She loves your father, don't misunderstand me, but she gave up her dreams for him. And when nursing school became impossible with a baby on the way, she convinced herself it was noble, sacrificial, the kind of thing good mothers do. But I'm not asking her to sacrifice anything. You're asking her to watch you do what she never could, to succeed where she failed. And for someone who's built their entire identity around martyrdom, that's unbearable. Clara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She can't stand the idea that you might not need to suffer the way she did. The truth of it hit like a punch to the gut. All those comments about family obligation, about being selfish, about forgetting where I came from, they weren't really about money or distance or practicality. They were about Mom's own buried dreams, festering like infected wounds. What do I do? You call that dean back, you tell him exactly what happened, and then you pack your bags and go. She'll never forgive me. Clara's smile was sad but determined. Honey, she'll never forgive you for succeeding, and she'll never forgive you for failing. The only difference is which regret you'll have to live with. She pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. That's my friend Janet. She works in admissions at a community college near Stanford. If you need somewhere to stay while you figure out housing, she's got a couch and a big heart. I stared at the card, this lifeline thrown across 20 years of family dysfunction. Clara, I said, do you ever regret staying? She was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Every single day. She paid for our coffee and stood to leave, then paused at the edge of the booth. Your mother threw away your letter because she was terrified of losing you. But what she doesn't understand is that love isn't supposed to be a cage. Clara touched my shoulder gently. Don't let her fear become your prison. After she left, I sat in that booth for another hour, turning the business card over in my hands. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky the same orange as Clara's paint-stained fingers. For the first time since finding that torn letter in the trash, I knew what I had to do. I waited until Saturday morning to call Stanford, not because I was procrastinating, but because I needed to be strategic. Saturday meant Mom would be at her grocery run, Dad would be fixing something in the garage, and Sophia would be at soccer practice. 3 hours of privacy to either save my future or watch it crumble completely. My hands shook as I dialed the admissions office number I'd memorized like a prayer. The phone rang once, twice, and then a cheerful voice answered. Stanford University Admissions, this is Jennifer. Hi, I said, my voice coming out smaller than intended. I'm calling about my acceptance letter. I think there might have been an issue with the mail. Of course. Can I get your name and application number? I rattled off the information, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was typing, the sound of a mouse clicking, then a pause that lasted forever. Oh, Ms. Marino, actually, let me transfer you to Dean Harrison's office. He's been trying to reach you. Before I could ask why, music filled my ear. Some classical pieces that sounded expensive and intimidating. The kind of music that played in buildings where important decisions were made by people who belonged there. Ms. Moreno. A man's voice, warm but professional. This is Dean Harrison. I'm so glad you called. You were trying to reach me? For 2 weeks now,
We sent your acceptance packet, then a follow-up letter about housing deadlines, then another about orientation registration. When we didn't hear back, I started to worry we'd lost a promising student to another institution. 2 weeks. The letter had been in the trash for 2 weeks while Dean Harrison was trying to reach me, while housing deadlines passed, while other students claimed the spots that should have been available. "I'm sorry," I managed. "There was a problem with the mail. I only just got the acceptance letter." "Well, that explains the radio silence. I was starting to take it personally." He chuckled, and the sound was so kind I almost cried. "The good news is we held your spot. I had a feeling about your application when I read it, and I wasn't about to let bureaucratic hiccups cost us a student of your caliber." You held my spot? Your essay about working at the food bank, about seeing education as a tool for systemic change, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of here. Plus, your SAT scores and GPA speak for themselves. I sank into the kitchen chair, overwhelmed by the simple fact that someone believed in me, that someone had read my words and seen potential instead of problems. "Now, let's get you caught up," Dean Harrison continued. "The housing deadline was yesterday, but I can push that through. Financial aid paperwork needs to be submitted by Monday, but that's doable. Orientation is in 3 weeks. Do you have any questions about—" The front door slammed. "Leah?" Mom's voice echoed from the entryway, earlier than expected. "Whose car is that in the driveway?" My blood turned to ice. There was no car in the driveway. Mom was fishing, but she'd caught something in my voice, some note of guilt or secrecy that had triggered her instincts. "Actually," I said quickly into the phone, "could I call you back? I need to handle something here." "Of course. But Ms. Moreno, don't wait too long. Time is our enemy at this point." I hung up just as Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway, grocery bags in hand, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Who were you talking to?" "Nobody. Just a friend from school." She set the bags on the counter with deliberate slowness, her gaze never leaving my face. "Which friend?" "Does it matter?" "It matters when you're being secretive about it. And it matters when you're making phone calls while I'm not here." She started unpacking groceries with military precision, each item placed exactly where it belonged. "What aren't you telling me, mija?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. I could lie, deflect, pretend everything was fine. I could keep playing the role of the obedient daughter who never questioned, never pushed, never wanted anything beyond what Mom decided was appropriate. Or I could tell the truth. "I know what you did," I said quietly. Her hands stilled on a box of cereal. "What did I do?" "You threw away my acceptance letter." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, Mom slowly turned to face me, and the expression on her face was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Not anger, not guilt, something colder, more calculating. "You went through the trash? You threw away my acceptance letter. I threw away a piece of paper that was going to ruin this family." The casual admission hit me like a slap. No denial, no apology, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement that she'd destroyed my future because it inconvenienced her plans. That wasn't your decision to make. Everything in this house is my decision to make. Everything that affects this family goes through me. She stepped closer, and I could see the years of resentment carved into the line around her eyes. "You think you can just waltz off to California and leave us all behind? Your father's back is getting worse. Sophia needs guidance. This family needs you. This family needs to learn how to function without me." The words came out stronger than I'd intended, and Mom's face darkened. "Ungrateful. Just like your aunt." Maybe Aunt Clara had the right idea. Mom's hand moved so fast I barely saw it coming. The slap echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot, leaving my cheek burning and my ears ringing. We stood there, both of us breathing hard, both of us shocked by what had just happened. In 18 years, Mom had never laid a hand on me. Guilt and manipulation were her weapons of choice, not violence. But I'd pushed her past the point where her usual tactics worked, and now we were in uncharted territory. "Go to your room," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "No." "Excuse me?" I said, "No. I'm not going to my room like a child. I'm 18 years old and I'm going to college." I walked past her toward the stairs, my cheeks still throbbing, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Behind me, I heard her sharp intake of breath, the sound of someone whose power had just been challenged by the person who was supposed to fear it most. "If you walk up those stairs, don't expect me to help you when this all falls apart." I paused at the bottom of the staircase and looked back at her. This woman who'd given me life and then spent 18 years trying to control how I lived it. This woman who loved me and resented me in equal measure. "I never expected you to help me. That's why I learned to help myself." In my room, the door locked, I called Dean Harrison back. "Ms. Moreno, is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "About that housing deadline you mentioned, what do I need to do?" Dean Harrison's voice was steady and professional when I called him back, but I could hear the concern underneath. "Ms. Moreno, I want to make sure you understand the timeline we're working with. Housing deposits need to be submitted by Monday. Financial aid paperwork by Wednesday. Can you handle that?" "Yes," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I can handle it." After I hung up, I sat on my bed staring at the acceptance letter pieces I'd taped back together. The Stanford logo was still stained with Cossey grounds, but the words were clear. "We are pleased to offer you admission." Someone believed I belonged there. Someone saw potential where my own mother saw problems. Downstairs, I could hear her moving around the kitchen with sharp, angry movements. Cabinet doors slamming, dishes clattering, the sound of someone whose carefully constructed world had just been challenged by the person who was supposed to stay silent and grateful. Dad's truck pulled into the driveway at 5:30, same as always. I heard his heavy footsteps on the porch, the squeak of the screen door, then voices. Mom's rapid-fire Spanish, the tone sharp with righteousness. Dad's slower responses, confusion evident even through the floorboards. Then footsteps on the stairs. Dad's work boots, deliberate and tired. He knocked on my door. "Leah, can we talk?" I opened it to find him standing in the hallway, still in his dusty work clothes, looking every one of his 45 years. His face was weathered from construction sites and worry, but his eyes held something I rarely saw: uncertainty. "Your mother says you've been making college plans without talking to us." I talked to her. She threw my acceptance letter in the trash. He winced like I hit him. "She told me about that, said it was an accident." "It wasn't an accident, Dad. She tore it in half first." For a long moment, he just stood there, wrestling with information that didn't fit the version of events Mom had given him. This was Dad's greatest weakness and his survival strategy. When faced with conflict, he chose the path that kept peace in the house, even if it meant ignoring uncomfortable truths. "College is expensive, mija. We just want what's best for you." What's best for me, or what's easiest for Mom?
Don't talk about your mother like that. Like what? Like she's a person who makes decisions based on her own fears instead of what's good for her children? I stepped closer, and he actually took a step back. "Dad, when's the last time you asked what I wanted? Not what Mom thinks I should want, but what I actually want." He looked down at his boots, and I knew the answer. He'd stopped asking because Mom had trained all of us to stop wanting anything that didn't fit her vision of how our family should work. "You're 18, he said finally. "You think you know everything." I know I got into Stanford on my own merit. I know I can get financial aid. I know that staying here isn't going to make Mom happy, it's just going to make her feel in control. Control isn't a bad thing when it keeps a family together. What family? The words came out harder than I intended. A family where Mom throws away my dreams? Where Sophia's already learning to make herself smaller so she doesn't threaten anyone? Where do you disappear behind your newspaper every time there's conflict? Dad flinched and I saw something crack in his careful composure. This house, this family, it's what we built together. No, it's what Mom built and what you let her build because it was easier than fighting her. We stared at each other in the hallway, and for a moment I thought he might actually hear me, might step up and be the father who protected my dreams instead of Mom's comfort. Instead, he sighed. "Your mother's calling for dinner." He turned and walked away, his shoulders more bent than when he'd climbed the stairs. Dinner was a minefield. Mom had cooked my favorite meal, arroz con pollo, fresh tortillas, the flan she usually saved for special occasions. A peace offering disguised as normal family dinner, except nothing about the tension crackling around our table was normal. Sophia kept glancing between Mom and me like she was watching a bomb that might explode at any moment. Dad focused on his plate with laser intensity, and Mom smiled, the kind of smile that was sharp enough to cut. "So," she said, passing the rice, "I've been thinking about your college situation." I nearly choked on my water. My college situation? There's perfectly good community college 20 minutes away. You could get your basics done, maybe transfer somewhere closer to home. I already got into Stanford. Stanford's very far away, very expensive, and frankly, mija, I'm not sure you're ready for that kind of independence. The condescension in her voice made my teeth clench. "Ready?" She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "You can't even do your own laundry without leaving soap stains. You think you're ready to live 3,000 miles away?" "Mom," what about Sophia? What kind of example are you setting for your sister? Doesn't family matter that you can just abandon the people who've sacrificed everything for you?" Sophia's fork clattered against her plate. "She's not abandoning anyone by going to college." The words were quiet but clear, and they hit the table like lightning. Mom's head snapped toward Sophia, eyes blazing. "Excuse me? Leah's not abandoning us by going to college. She's doing what she's supposed to do." "Sophia," Dad started. "No," Sophia said, and her voice was getting stronger. "Leah got into Stanford. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how smart you have to be? Smart doesn't pay bills. Smart doesn't take care of family. Neither does keeping people trapped." The words exploded out of Sophia like she'd been holding them in for years. Trapped. Yeah, trapped, like you tried to do to Aunt Clara, like you're doing to Leah, like you're probably planning to do to me. I am trying to keep this family together. By making everyone miserable? Mom stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. "That's enough. Both of you, to your rooms now."
"No," I said. "What did you say?" I stood up too, my hands steady on the table. I said, "No, I'm 18 years old, I got into one of the best universities in the country, and I'm going, with or without your permission." "Not without my signature on the financial aid forms." The threat hung in the air between us, cold and sharp. She was right. I needed her tax information, her signature, her cooperation to get the aid that would make Stanford possible. "Then I'll take out loans." "With what credit? With what cosigner?" She had me there, and she knew it. 18 years old with no credit history, no assets, no way to borrow the money I needed without family help. "I'll figure it out." "No, you won't, because you're going to come to your senses, apologize for this ridiculous tantrum, and start looking at realistic options." I looked around the table at my family. Dad, still staring at his plate, choosing silence over courage. Sophia, tears streaming down her face, but chin set with determination. And Mom, righteous and immovable, convinced that destroying my dreams was an act of love. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Mom's expression softened slightly, thinking she'd won. "I'm sorry it took me this long to see what you really are." Her face went white, then red. "Get out." "What?" "Get out of my house, right now." "Maria," Dad said weakly. "No. She wants independence so badly, she can have it. See how long she lasts without family, without support, without anyone who actually cares about her."
I looked at Sophia, whose eyes were wide with panic, at Dad, who was finally looking up from his plate but still wasn't going to intervene, and at Mom, whose love had always come with conditions. I was finally strong enough to refuse. "Fine," I said. "I'll pack." I walked out of that kitchen with my spine straight and my hands steady, even though everything inside me was shaking. Behind me, I heard Sophia calling my name, Dad saying something about everyone calming down, and Mom telling him to stay out of it. But I didn't turn around. For the first time in 18 years, I didn't turn around to fix what was broken. I packed like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. Every piece of clothing, every book, every photo that mattered, everything that made me who I was outside of this house, outside of Mom's carefully constructed version of who I should be. Sophia appeared in my doorway as I was folding my Stanford sweatshirt, the one I'd bought with babysitting money last year when I still thought getting accepted was impossible. "You can't really leave." "I have to." I tucked the sweatshirt into my suitcase, and it felt like packing hope. "And someday, you'll have to leave too." "But what if something happens to you? What if you can't make it?" I stopped packing and really looked at her. 15 years old, still believing that home was supposed to be safe, that family was supposed to protect your dreams instead of crushing them. "Sophia, do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted to take art classes? Mom said they were too expensive. But you kept drawing anyway. In your notebooks, on scraps of paper, anywhere you could." I sat on the bed beside her. "You never stopped, even when she discouraged you." "That's different." "No, it's not. You're stronger than you think. And when you're 18, when it's time for you to choose your path, I'll help you. I promise." She started crying then, the ugly kind of crying that comes from losing the last person who understood you. I pulled her close, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, memorizing the weight of her against my shoulder. "I wrote you something." I pulled a folded paper from my desk drawer. "Don't read it until after I'm gone, okay?" She nodded, clutching the letter like a lifeline.
Downstairs, I could hear them arguing. Mom's voice high and sharp, Dad's rumbling responses, the sound of a marriage that had learned to function around conflict instead of through it. They were arguing about me, about what came next, about whose fault this was. But they weren't coming upstairs to stop me. That told me everything I needed to know. I called Aunt Clara. "Leah?" Her voice was cautious. "How did it go with the dean?" "Good. Bad. Mom kicked me out." Silence. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Clara, you don't have to." 20 minutes. She hung up. I finished packing in the kind of quiet that feels like holding your breath. Every now and then, I'd hear Sophia in her room, opening and closing drawers, and I knew she was packing too. Not to leave, but to prepare, to think about what she'd take with her when her time came. Dad appeared in my doorway as I was zipping my last suitcase. "Your mother's upset," he said. "I noticed. She loves you. She has a hard time showing it when she's scared." I turned to look at him, this man who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with math homework and worked double shifts to keep our family afloat. This man who'd chosen peace over protection every single time it mattered. "Dad, did you know she threw away Aunt Clara's acceptance letter too?" His face went very still. "What?" 20 years ago, art school in Chicago, full scholarship, Mom convinced Grandma it was a waste of money. I watched the information sink in, watched him realize that this wasn't about one letter or one daughter. This was a pattern, a cycle of control disguised as love. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "There's a lot you don't know because you don't ask. You let Mom make all the decisions so you don't have to take responsibility for any of them." It was harsh, but it was true. And maybe it was time someone in this family started telling the truth. "You're my daughter," he said. "I want what's best for you." Then why didn't you stop her? The question hung between us, and I could see him struggling with it, struggling with the realization that his silence had consequences, that avoiding conflict actually didn't prevent anyone from getting hurt. "I don't know how to fight her," he said finally. "You don't fight her. You protect me." Before he could respond, headlights swept across my bedroom window. Clara's car in the driveway, 20 minutes on the dot. I picked up my suitcases. I have to go. Dad stepped aside to let me pass, and I could feel his eyes on me as I walked down the hallway. At Sophia's door, I paused. "Remember what I told you," I said through the wood. "I will," came her muffled reply. The stairs creaked under my feet, each step taking me further from the only home I'd ever known. In the living room, Mom sat rigid on the couch, staring at the wall like I didn't exist. "This doesn't change anything. Running away doesn't make you an adult." "I'm not running away. I'm running toward something. You'll be back. When reality hits, when you realize how hard the world really is, you'll come back." I set my suitcases down and walked over to the couch. For a moment, I just looked at her. This woman who'd given me life and then spent 18 years trying to control how I lived it. This woman who loved me and resented me in equal measure. Maybe I will come back someday, but if I do, it'll be because I choose to, not because I have to.
She turned to look at me then, and for just a second, I saw something vulnerable in her eyes, something that looked almost like regret. But then her face hardened again. "Don't expect me to be here when you do." I picked up my suitcases and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Dad's footsteps in the hallway, but he didn't follow me outside. Clara was leaning against her car, arms crossed, face grim. When she saw me coming down the front steps with my bags, something in her expression softened. "You okay?" "I will be." She took one of my suitcases and loaded it into her trunk. "Janet's expecting us. She's got clean sheets and leftover pasta, and she doesn't ask too many questions." I looked back at the house. Sophia's light was on, and I could see her silhouette in the window. Dad stood in the living room doorway, watching us, but not coming outside. Mom was nowhere to be seen. "Clara," I said as we got into the car, "do you think I'm doing the right thing?" She started the engine and put it in reverse. "Honey, there's no such thing as the right thing when your family's broken. There's just the thing that lets you sleep at night." As we backed out of the driveway, I caught one last glimpse of Sophia in her window. She held up her hand in a small wave, and I waved back, both of us knowing this wasn't goodbye forever. This was just the beginning. Janet's apartment smelled like coffee and cat litter, with books stacked on every available surface and plants crowding the windowsills. She was exactly what I'd expected from Clara's description. Mid-50s, no-nonsense haircut, the kind of smile that said she'd helped lost college kids before. "You can stay as long as you need," she said, showing me a fold-out couch in her study, "but I'm guessing you won't need long." She was right. I spent Sunday filling out financial aid forms with obsessive precision, researching student loans, calculating exactly how much debt I'd be taking on. The numbers were scary, but not scarier than the alternative. Staying home, going to community college, watching my dreams shrink to fit Mom's vision of what my life should look like. Monday morning, I called Dean Harrison. "Ms. Marino, I was hoping to hear from you. Do you have everything sorted out?" "Almost. I submitted the housing deposit and financial aid paperwork, but I need to ask about something." I took a breath. "My family situation has gotten complicated. I don't think I'll be able to get parental signatures on some of the forms." Silence. Then, "I see. Are you an independent student now?" "I guess I am." That changes some things, actually. There are different aid programs for students who can't rely on family support. Let me connect you with our financial aid office. They specialize in situations like yours. Situations like mine. As if being disowned by your parents for pursuing education was common enough to have a category. Maybe it was. Tuesday, I got an email from Sophia. Short, careful, clearly written with the awareness that Mom might be reading over her shoulder. Leah, I hope you're doing well. Things are quiet here. I read your letter. I understand. Love, S. I understood it was Sophia speak for, I'm going to follow your example when my time comes. The thought made me simultaneously proud and terrified. Proud that she was learning to think for herself, terrified of what Mom might do when she realized she was losing control of both daughters. Wednesday, the financial aid office called with news that made me cry right there in Janet's kitchen. My status as an independent student, combined with my academic record, qualified me for enough grants and work-study programs to make Stanford not just possible, but manageable. You'll still need loans, the counselor explained, but much less than we originally calculated. And Ms. Moreno, Dean Harrison asked me to tell you that we have a work-study position in the admissions office, helping other first-generation students navigate the application process. Helping kids like me, kids whose families saw college as betrayal instead of achievement, kids who needed someone to tell them their dreams weren't too big, too expensive, too inconvenient for everyone else's comfort. Thursday, I bought my plane ticket to California. Friday morning, my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. Leah? His voice was rough, like he'd been awake all night. Can we talk? I'm listening.
Your mother, she's not doing well. I wanted to feel guilty. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I just felt tired. Dad, I can't fix her, and I can't sacrifice my life to make her feel better about hers. I know. The admission sounded like it cost him something. I've been thinking about what you said, about not protecting you. And you were right. I should have stopped her. Should have stopped her 20 years ago with Clara. Should have stopped her last week with you. He paused. I'm going to try to do better with Sophia. It wasn't an apology, exactly, but it was an acknowledgement, recognition that his silence had consequences, that being a father meant more than just providing a paycheck and avoiding conflict. Sophia's going to need you, I said. When she starts talking about her own dreams, her own plans, she's going to need someone in her corner. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. After he hung up, I sat in Janet's sunny kitchen and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in my life, someone in my family had chosen to see the situation clearly instead of through the lens of what was easiest or most comfortable. It was a start. Saturday morning, Clara drove me to the airport. We didn't talk much during the drive. What was there to say? We'd covered the important stuff already. But as she pulled up to the departure curb, she reached into her purse and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. For your dorm room, she said. Inside was a small framed photo. Me at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a ribbon from the county science fair. I'd forgotten that picture existed, forgotten that anyone had thought to preserve that moment of pure, uncomplicated pride. Mom probably has the negative somewhere, but she never framed it, too busy framing Sophia's soccer pictures. I stared at the photo, at this little girl who'd been so excited about winning 3rd place in the elementary school science fair, who'd already known she wanted to understand how things worked, wanted to help people, wanted to make a difference. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me. Just remember that little girl when things get hard. Remember what she wanted before anyone told her it was too much to want. At security, Clara hugged me tight enough to crack ribs. I'm proud of you, she said into my hair. Your grandmother would be proud of you too. And then I was through security, walking toward my gate, carrying everything I owned in 2 suitcases and a backpack. No family waving goodbye, no tearful send-offs,
Just me and my stubborn determination to write a different ending to this story. But as the plane lifted off, banking west toward California and my future, I thought about Sophia reading my letter, about Dad's promise to do better, about Mom sitting in our living room, realizing that love without respect isn't love at all. It's just control wearing a prettier mask. Maybe this departure wasn't just about me leaving. Maybe it was about giving everyone else permission to change too. The plane climbed higher, and I opened the financial aid packet Dean Harrison had sent, reading through the work-study job description one more time. Helping first-generation students navigate the college process. Students whose families might not understand. Students who needed someone to tell them they belonged. I thought about that little girl in Clara's photo clutching her science fair ribbon like it was made of gold. She'd known what she wanted before anyone taught her to want less. It was time to remember how that felt. My name is Leah Moreno. I'm 18 years old, and 3 months ago I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones most afraid of who you might become. The Stanford campus sprawls under the California sun like a promise kept. Red-tiled roofs, palm trees that shouldn't exist but do anyway, students walking between classes with the kind of casual confidence I'm still learning to wear. My dorm room overlooks the main quad, and every morning I wake up to the sight of other people's dreams taking shape. The acceptance letter, the real one, not the coffee-stained pieces I'd taped together, sits framed on my desk. Next to it, Clara's photo of 8-year-old me holding my science fair ribbon, and beside that, a Mew photo. Sophia at her first travel soccer tournament, the one she finally tried out for after Dad drove her to practice every day for 3 weeks.
He kept his promise. When Sophia came home talking about college prep courses, he didn't hide behind his newspaper. When she mentioned wanting to study abroad someday, he didn't let Mom dismiss it as impractical. He's learning to use his voice, finally understanding that silence isn't neutrality, it's choosing a side. Mom still doesn't speak to me. The few updates I get come through Sophia's carefully worded texts or Dad's awkward phone calls. She's convinced I'll fail, that I'll come crawling back, broke and humbled, ready to apologize for the crime of wanting more than she thought I deserved. Maybe I will fail. College is harder than I expected. The workload crushing, the competition fierce. Some nights I lie awake calculating loan payments and wondering if I was naive to think I belonged here. But then morning comes, and I walk across campus to my work-study job in the admissions office. Yesterday, I helped a girl from Nevada whose parents insisted she stay close to home. Last week, it was a boy from Alabama whose father called college a waste of time for someone who should just take over the family business. "You really think I can do this?" the girl from Nevada asked, clutching her application materials like they might disappear. "I know you can," I told her, and meant it. I know because 2 years ago, someone told me the same thing. And because dreams don't actually get smaller when people try to crush them. They just get stronger. Dean Harrison stops by sometimes, checking on his work-study students. Last month, he told me about a letter he'd received from my high school counselor. "She said you were one of the most determined students she'd ever worked with," he said, "but you almost didn't apply because of family pressure." "I almost didn't come because of family sabotage." "And now you're here helping other students navigate similar challenges," he smiled. "There's something poetic about that." Poetic, maybe. Or maybe it's just what happens when you refuse to let other people's fears become your limitations. 3 weeks ago, I got an unexpected email from Mom. "Leah, I saw your picture in the Stanford newsletter, working with admissions. Your father showed me. You look happy. I don't understand why you had to leave to find that, but I suppose I don't understand a lot of things. Sophia talks about you constantly, about college applications and travel soccer and study abroad. She says you're helping her plan her future. I wanted to say I'm glad someone is. M." Not an apology, not an admission of guilt, but acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, I hadn't been completely wrong to want more than the life she'd planned for me. I wrote back, "Mom, I left because staying meant pretending to be smaller than I am. I hope someday you understand that leaving wasn't about rejecting you. It was about accepting myself. She hasn't responded yet. Maybe she never will. But for the first time, that's okay. I don't need her permission to be proud of who I'm becoming.
Sophia's visiting next month for spring break. She's applied to 7 colleges, 3 of them out of state. Her essays are about travel soccer and family dynamics and learning to dream big despite small expectations. They're brilliant, honest, and nothing like the safe, modest pieces Mom would have encouraged. "Are you scared?" I asked her during our last video call. "Terrified," she said, "but not of failing. I'm scared of staying small." "Good," I told her. "Fear of staying small is what gets you out. Fear of being big is what keeps you trapped." Tonight, I have a midterm to study for and a research paper due Friday. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with 3 prospective students whose families think college is a luxury they can't afford. Next week, I start training for a summer internship at a psychology research lab. It's exactly the life I dreamed of when I first opened that acceptance letter, back when I thought getting in was the hardest part. Now I know the hardest part isn't getting in. It's staying true to who you are once you're here. It's remembering that you belong, even when voices from home whisper that you don't. The coffee-stained acceptance letter sits in my desk drawer now, replaced by the clean copy Dean Harrison printed for me.
But I keep it anyway, a reminder of what it took to get here, of the choice between my mother's comfort and my own future. At that moment, I decided that love without respect isn't really love at all. And someday, when a scared 18-year-old sits in my office, clutching pieces of their own dreams, wondering if they're strong enough to disappoint their family in order to honor themselves, I'll show them that letter. I'll tell them about the girl who almost let someone else's fears become her limitations. About the sister who learned to dream bigger by watching someone else refuse to dream smaller. About the aunt who waited 20 years to pursue her art, and the father who finally found his voice. I'll tell them what Clara told me in that diner. There's no such thing as the right thing when your family's broken. There's just the thing that lets you sleep at night. And then I'll hand them a tissue, help them fill out their financial aid forms, and remind them that sometimes the biggest act of love is refusing to stay small for someone else's comfort. My name is Leah Marino. I'm 18 years old, and I learned that when the quiet daughter finally stops being quiet, she doesn't just find her voice. She teaches others how to use theirs. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.